You know, one of the questions I actually have is, what you've been working on this project for 12 years. So,
They were kids. Look at
yeah, what are the changes in the circus from when you started to where it is now? I mean, do you see transition where it ended and then maybe started to come back in a different way?
Well, that's how the whole structure of the film was done. I mean, we were really doing this, and you missed the very beginning, but this all started as a chance to try to do a television pilot for Tommy. And you guys like, that was just the first 2 minutes of the film that you missed. But so when they started doing that and they started doing the circus, we were just going to do a pilot. But the circus had just said that we thought no one would come to do these bareback acts. And they announced 2 weeks before we went to shoot in Florida, they announced the end of the 3 Rings, and every family came. We were just very lucky to be there to record it. We were just lucky. I mean, that's really what it was. And then, you know, accidentally, as we were thinking, I wanted to finish it because I knew the 250th anniversary. I heard the Smithsonian was doing something, and so we picked it up and won this contest on Seed and Spark, and it's these whole contest greenlight thing. So we knew we had to finish it. And as we went back to interview everybody 2 years ago, over a year period, all of a sudden the elephants got retired. And all of a sudden the circus ended. I mean, it really was our timing. My timing is not usually that good. And it was an amazing timing to finish a film. And we were very lucky because we just got distribution. So tell all your friends, pre-buy on iTunes for $12.99. If we get 400 purchases, it goes to the front page of iTunes and Amazon. So we were lucky to have them and have these families. And for me, this is my second cultural preservation film. And it's the kind of film that, you know, History Channel and Nat Geo love to do narratives, and they do voiceovers, and they tell you what to think. And what's lovely for documentarians is we get to do cultural preservation just based on the stories from the people, and we don't give it narrative, and we let them tell their own stories, and it lasts longer. You know, it's not a trend. You're literally just listening to these people tell their own story, and their history gets preserved. So for us, that's really lucky, because I think that, you know, Ringling's about to come out with their own film in about 6 months with Access TV, I think it is. But again, it'll be based on Ringling's story, which is important, but it doesn't, they're not going to tell their story about people being mad at them, or the fact that the bareback riders are so angry that they didn't pay them. So it's, you know, that's why you need these independent films, so that people can tell the story they need to tell. And it's not that they're grateful for Ringling, as you can tell, but it's also what was the demise of the circus here in the United States, where it's still revered in Europe.
If you were to go back over these 12 years, what is the most, 1 or 2 moments that are most memorable for you?
Gosh. I think watching Tommy's career was huge for us, because we stayed friends with Karen so closely. And, you know, he makes it look easy, and Tommy's very hip and cool and handsome and fabulous. But that man who has the ego larger than, I mean, he's small, he's only like 5'7", but he's got an ego that's like as big as this building.
Was he wrong at time?
No, that was Alicio. He also, 2 of them, Tommy and Alicio, for a long time. They're so nasty to each other.
And they're both little guys.
And they're both little guys. And they're they talk about the gossip that goes on in the circus is amazing. Like, I get shocked. They're such like when you say, when they talk about girls being gossipers, the women are the strong ones in the circus. The men gossip more than the women do. So it's pretty, and the women actually band together to work together. It's really interesting. So yeah, it's an interesting place, but Tommy works his butt off, and to see Tommy and Karen have worked since they came from a very poor family, and they just didn't want to be poor anymore, and their father stole horses, and their mom, like, it's just their own true story, which doesn't get told a lot here, but since they were 14 and ran off to the circus together, they worked their butts off to make it. Every day Tommy's up at 4 in the morning caring for his horses. So to watch him finally transition and make a good living on The Walking Dead is a real success. He's his own story. Like, and so that, I think, was the most interesting thing to watch. And I think the heartbreaking moment was the year after we shot, and Karen to call me and tell me that Matt committed suicide. I think that was so sad, because he was such, out of all the brothers, he kept them together. And he had the,
You might have worn on him over time, just, you know, trying to keep that glue constantly, just, you know, being that mediator maybe?
he was the middle child. He really, all the brothers loved him. And so it was really, I think he just was a very melancholy, depressed person. You could tell he was very bitter from, I mean, you hear him, he was bitter about his family, he was bitter about his parents. You know, you never know, there's no answers to things like that. But that was very sad, because he was very talented. And so I think that's the sad part, but the happy part is to watch them all not give up hope, you know, and of course the person I fell in love with the most is Suarez, was Enrique Suarez. I just love the eldest of them all. He was so gracious and loved what he did, and I think that broke my heart the most was to know that he walked to the stable every day, but there were no horses there.
I mean, that part was.
But it filled his heart to
Yeah.
think about the memories, and that's what he was saying, that he walked to the stable every day, but he missed, and all of them loving the applause. See, it's hard. And Mark Crowley, who I'm also fell madly in love with, because he did not talk to us at all 10 years ago. And then he just opened up on his own ranch when we went to see the facility there. So that was, I mean, that's the joy of being a documentarian, is you wait and you wait and you wait for people to crack and to finally talk to you.
What was it like for you to watch in those 12 years what seemed like sort of the slow demise of animals and people and sort of the separation of?
Well, you know, in watching, I learned a lot about circus arts, is considering, we just showed this at the Kimmel, and it was the circus anniversary, April 3rd, which was the end of the 225th, and started their 226th year, but it took us, like, Philly did not celebrate, because it's like, oh, who cares about circus, even though it started in Philadelphia. It was really interesting for them, you know, they care about the Civil War, so it was just a different kind of, and they care about the Revolution, and so it was really interesting. But they have the only circus accredited university in the country. So they came out to celebrate with us. And it was Dominique Jandot, the Frenchman you see there, who his history came from Europe and ran the Big Apple Circus. And it was him who cares. He's like the preeminent circus bareback historian. He started Circupedia.org. So if you have any interest in anything circus, you can go to Circupedia.org. And he started that like 15, 20 years ago. And now he's retired, and his wife is an aerialist. They live in San Francisco and have a small circus in Texas. But anyway, Dominique, I was just shocked, I think, the most in the Smithsonian when he kind of revered his wife, and they were all there for a week doing talks and historical talks in the Smithsonian. And that he, all of a sudden, here's a man who just came out with his book on bareback riding, and he even says it's not as important as finally recognizing circus as an art. And so that was interesting, because you know, I think that seeing 300 schools in this country, and that circus art is going to be kept alive based on all this social performance. You know, it's sad, because I think horses and dogs love to work, and I watched that. That's what I learned over the last 12 years, is that they weren't abused. I mean, Tommy can be rough. I used to get upset because he wouldn't let me touch his dogs. I just like wanted to touch Bandit. You saw the healers behind him, the red and the blue healers. He's got tons of them, and now a shepherd, and I just love the dogs. But Karen goes, wait till he walks away. Like, we used to sneak to play with the dogs because he's very strict.
Why wouldn't he want you to touch?
Because he really has them trained well. Those dogs are on set. They make him a fortune. The horses you're not supposed to touch, but you know, I've done it now enough times because I know a dog is going to go touch them. Like, it's just, but he's protecting his investment, and they really are trained to watch him. They listen to him, and so if everybody starts messing with him, they're not going to be focused. And so,
And when you're on set, you know,
they have to only watch him, and
there's no time.
Right.
I mean, you got to get it done.
But those animals love to perform. When we were out there, that what was the one that he said was just he was training for a friend, the white one, can't remember.
The Andalusian.
The Andalusian.
Right.
And
Illusion.
the one that almost
Right
hit
over the camera.
right
Right over your camera.
Well, he had Blade and a couple of the other horses out doing routines, and that little Lucy was just sitting there doing the routines in her stall. She was doing this. And she wanted to come out and be with the other horses. So I really got to witness, and then the little one, he's got 3 horses that have been on the road with him, Joker, Poker Joe, and Aces. And Aces is the baby. And whenever Poker Joe and Joker are in the field or going to perform, you hear Ace just whinnying, because he just wants to be with the others in the stall, and everybody has to go over and get Ace and bring him in, and then he's happy to just, they really want to work. They love performing, and I didn't know that about animals, and to me that was, they want a mission like anybody else. They get bored, and they love that. Yeah.
You know, keep in mind now, you have the expert on the circus for all these years, having been that. So if anybody has any
Not a circus
questions,
sister, but I got to meet all the
now's
experts.
the time.
Where is Tommy at?
Tommy is right outside Atlanta. He just bought, he was renting, and that should be its own television show. Because Karen's like, this is gonna be a nightmare. They just bought a piece of property and they're gonna build the ranch there and they moved the horses there, but they've all been like living in trailers illegally, hiding out because they're not supposed to, they just have a lot of people because to do the stuff that they need to do. It's right off, pretty close to where the Walking Dead set is, which has its own town. It's amazing what they do for that series. And he just finished a Dolly Parton movie, another movie. He's got a lovely woman by the name of Sierra, a young woman who's brilliant in her 20s, who's been doing all the stunts with him now. Yeah, so that's gonna be, it's a mess. The ranch is a mess and he's building it himself. He's just that kind of person. He gets up at 4 in the morning and starts doing something.
After watching this film, there's a horse I have in right now that I'm working with for a client, and it's like the personality of this horse. What I said to her was, you need to talk to this guy, Tommy, because this horse with somebody like that would be, I think, he just wants this job. It would be really cool to see that.
He does. He'll take on
You
clients.
know, because this horse, unfortunately, the lady, the horse is pretty kind of crippled. She didn't know he had bolts in his ankles and stuff like that. He was an ex-race horse. But there's just something about this horse, and after seeing a film, especially with him lying down on the ground and doing those comical things, I almost think that this horse would be great for that because he wants that. And I think somebody like that would do really well with this horse and give it a purpose, you know. Because of that ilk, you can't ride him, but I think he'd be good doing stuff like that.
Yeah, they're all amazing trainers. It's just because I've spent more time with Tommy, but I know Alicio loves his animals. Alicio's horse is one of the main horses on the new movie, the Mustang.
It's just come out. Robert Redford produced it. So when you see the beautiful buckskin horse in that movie, that's Alicio's.
And these guys are trying to do a short.
Which is Alicio now?
Yeah.
The oldest brother.
Curly hair.
The one that was at
Yeah, he was in.
So can you talk
Yeah.
about that for a second?
What?
About Alicio and any what they're doing now, where he is, what's going on with him?
Well, Alicia's doing his show. That's what I was saying. He's really doing his main show, and that's
No popcorn though.
What?
No popcorn.
No popcorn, yes.
No popcorn.
Yes.
No popcorn. No popcorn at all. No, and he's doing his show, and they just have the baby, so that's kind of their concentration right now. Everything's baby. We got a lot of kids. She looks just like Alicia, so it's pretty amazing. Have you seen the pictures?
Yeah.
It's just like him. It's like, okay, they popped out a baby, look like Alicia. But yeah, it's really cute. And then he's really working on Chow, so which I never say right, but I think that's the way you pronounce it. Maseo. Yeah. So that show's doing really well for him. And
Talk a little bit about what it was like to get yourself where you are with iTunes.
oh, the distribution?
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't us. It was, I was very lucky because I've been in Philadelphia for 20 years, and this is my second feature film. And my first feature film did really well, and that was completely different. It was on the Memory Save Tibetan history. So when we did this film, the film office in Philadelphia, which helps filmmakers, sent it, Gravitas, which actually, and I didn't know that at the time, which is right out of Cleveland here in Ohio, across the border, had asked Philadelphia if they knew filmmakers, and they sent them 30 films in process, or in progress, or whatever that had been made. And I didn't even think anything more about it, because I didn't realize why they asked me for my film, and they were big, they were my, what do they call it, their fiscal sponsors for the film. That they didn't really help raise money, but they're very emotionally supportive and a great team of people. So they called me up a couple months ago and said, we have good news. We sent 30 films and yours is the only one. They just asked for 2 films to talk to the filmmakers. And I'd never had anything that easy. I called them and they said, we love your film. I don't even think you saw it. I think you only saw the trailer because we love the trailer, we want to take the film. So I was very lucky and I got distribution, which means nothing for documentaries. It's not like if we sell a lot, then we make a percentage. But it usually, first of all, it's out of your pocket to pay for what we call errors and omission insurance. It's very expensive to make a documentary and to get it out there. So an attorney, that's $4,000, errors and omission, that's $4,000, and then your deal attorney, which is another. So for you, it's exciting to get somebody to be interested in your film, but then you have to find the $10,000 to get it out in the world. So, like I was just joking with them, I bought my house 3 times, and luckily I was smart enough when I was younger, working full time to do that. But it's great. So
Yeah, you're doing what you love.
Yes, exactly, you do what you love.
Now, do you have other documentaries in the works?
I do. That's it's a perfect question that I'd love to get asked. So I have one that I can't seem to finishing funds for, which is about Tyrell Biggs, who was a boxer out of Philadelphia. So we're waiting for finishing funds for that. But we have a real exciting one now that we just did the holding agreement and then what we call the sizzle or sort of the trailer for a project called Alexander Williams, which is about the youngest black teenager to be executed in Pennsylvania. It's a very serious documentary. But the families, what's lovely about this, and the reason we took it on was a book called Alexander Williams McClay. And the professor, the guy that wrote it is a professor at Newman University, head of education. And he is the great-grandson of the black attorney who was the first black attorney in Pennsylvania, was part of the ABA, American Bar Association. And his grandfather lost the case. It was one of only 4 cases they lost that the boy got executed. They gave him $10 to defend him. And so what's really interesting about this case for us is that the families, Dr. Lemon wrote this book about his great-grandfather. But as he was doing it, finding out about this case, they found so much evidence that the boy was innocent. But what was really interesting is the family, he has one sister alive who's now 88. But there's so many children of the, aunts and uncles in the family that all come together with Dr. Lemon. And the boy was accused of killing a school marm, stabbing her 27 times. The niece of the woman who was killed has come forward out of New York and said, no, our family all knew it was her husband who did it. So all the 3 families have come together to try to exonerate this man, this young boy that was killed. And they're now been going to the courts. It's a really interesting case of these 3 families coming together to do a right. So very different, because I do both cultural and justice, so kind of excited. You need to take breaks from different subject matter to keep fresh.
Talk a little bit about you.
Aren't they done with me?
No, you're really interesting. But you've explained all this stuff. But what about you? What do you do? Beyond filmmaking, what do you do? How did you get into it? What was your background?
Right out of college, I went to Pitt, and so I'm from Pittsburgh. I'm from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I'm a Pennsylvania girl all the way. Went to Pitt, and then interned at KDK. I was going to go to law school. And it was really KDK that made my career, by a guy by the name of Arthur Greenwald, who worked with Mr. Rogers, was my mentor. And then one of the first things I did is, if you guys are from here, you might know Bill Burns and Patty Burns, and they were like the big, so that was my first piece that I got to do the history of, 30 years or something of the Burns family, and not so long ago. And left KDK and worked for CBS a lot across the country. And after that, did commercials, trying to summarize the story, and then I missed storytelling and documentary. And I was most kids coming out of college now do their independent stuff right away, but I was old. I didn't start my first indie film until I was old. I was like 48, so I became indie in my late 40s. And you have to do both. I still do a lot of nonprofit work for different foundations just to make a living, and commercial and this and that, and advertising. And then you stay up late and take 10 years to make a film.
And then if people want to follow you, what's your website?
So each film has a website. So we do have, The Great Flip Off has a website, and Facebook is our biggest following, and so does Digital Dharma, which is the name